Welcome back, everybody. In the previous video, we saw how we could export Microsoft Excel data to a CSV file. And this video is going to pick up right where we left off there. We're going to take that CSV data and we're going to import it into Python, thus completing the whole transfer from Microsoft Excel to Python. So let's see how we can do that. The first thing I want you to know that in Python we can import the CSV module, and the CSV module has many functions and methods that will help you work with CSV data inside Python. The online documentation is well written and very detailed, so you can look up any sort of functions or methods online to help you. The next thing I'm going to do is define an empty list, and I'm going to call it whatever I want, but in this case I'm going to call it data, because at the end of this, data will be storing all of our CSV data. And the idea is that we're going to iterate through each row of our CSV file, and each time we're going to append to this currently empty list. Now I'm going to give a command, I'm just going to do several commands here with open and test file. And here's really the heart of reading in the data. And before I execute this, I want to point out, I'm going to need to change my directory to the desktop. Let me do that. Okay, so now I'm in the desktop, and in the desktop is where my test file is, and this needs to be true. The test file, or the file that you want to read in, must be in your current working directory. And just to check that out, I can click on the File Explorer, and there is my testfile.csv. So I know I'm good to go there. Now let's get to these 4 commands that I've typed here. The first 2 you may not entirely be clear. That's okay. You don't have to completely understand these, but just know that they exist and you can easily read in that data set using these commands. So the first one is with, and that's a keyword, space open, and that's a function. And so we pass to that function the name of the test file, or the name of the CSV file, and then we're going to say with open as CSV file. So that creates a CSV object, CSV file, and then we can do methods to this object CSV file. So what I've got here is a variable called spam, or you can call it whatever you want, and I have the method csv.reader, so I'm going to read that in, and I'm going to read the CSV file in. So reader is a function or method of the CSV module, CSV reader. So I'm sending that object in, and then we're going to iterate over the rows of the CSV data. So for row in spam, so it's going to go 1 row at a time, and each row is a list. So I'm going to append each row or each list to my list. So that's going to end up giving me a list of lists as my data set. Alright, so I'm going to hit enter, and bam, it goes through. Everything is good to go. So let's check it out. Now first I'm just going to type data and see what we've got. And there you see my list of lists. So you can see the double brackets there. Here's the first list. That is the first row of the CSV file. That's the column headers. Here's the second list in my list of lists, right? 0 voltage, 0 current, 2.2 kilo ohm resistor. Here's the third row of my data set, and notice now these guys are empty, right? Those guys are empty, and that was true in our data set. The third column was empty once we got below that 2.2 kilo ohm resistor. Also notice that the numerical data like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and the current, they are strings now. So if we wanted to perform some operation on them, we would have to convert them to numerical data like floats or ints. Now that the data is into Python, I can just do things that I would normally do, like a data of 0, that gives me the first list. So that those are the column headers. Data of 1, that's the second row, right, of my Excel file. Data of 2, and so on, right? I could slice it and do all those good things that I did with lists. I could also find the length of my data set, which is useful. So if I do length of data, that tells me 12. That's the number of lists. All right, so we have 12 rows in my data set. And if I wanted the number of columns, I could ask for the length of any one of those rows, like the 0th row. That returns 3, so I know that I have 3 columns, and I have then a 12 by 3 data set. So that's really, really nice. Now you might ask, why would I want to do such a thing? Why would I want to export data from Excel into Python? And the reason is that there are a lot of things that you might want to do, a lot of different operations that you might want to do on your data set that are easier or more easily done in Python than Excel. And I'll just leave it at that. Now you also might ask, well, can I just type my data set into Python instead of doing this exporting business? And to answer that, I'm going to now give you a real example with a real data set instead of a toy data set. So I'm going to clear everything, start fresh, and I'm going to bring up a real data set that I have from a cell phone carrier. This is a real data set from a contact I have at a certain company. But so you'll see that there's column headers, record index, file number, time, signal to noise ratio, downlink modulation type, uplink. And so there are many, many rows as well. You can see the rows here. It goes past 4,000. So you're not going to type this in to Python manually. That's the idea. Notice also a lot of these data are ints. You know, they're varying types. Ints, strings, floats, more strings, right? Empty. There's one that's empty. All right, so let's see if we can get this whole data set into Python, and we wonder, how long does it take for Python to load in all these data? 4,000 rows, right? That's a lot. Is it? Is it a lot? Not for a computer, it turns out. Anyway, what I'm going to do, then I'm going to just repeat this whole process now. I'm going to save the file on my desktop. You can choose whichever directory you want. But the important thing here is that I'm going to save as type CSV. And so you'll see my file name is Phoenix Drive Test Data.csv right on the desktop. And it gives me a warning, remember, that you're going to lose some functionality or some features. Yeah, that's okay, because I have the original still. All right, so that creates then on my desktop this, let's see, there it is. There's the CSV file. Now I'm going to load that in. So because I'm starting fresh, I need to import the CSV module again. And then I'm going to set my data equal to the empty string, the empty list, excuse me. All right, now I'm going to type with open, and I'm going to type all those commands again. And this time I'm going to type the Phoenix. There we go. All right, with the Phoenix Drive Test Dataset.csv. All right, and so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to iterate through the rows, append the rows to my data set, and we're going to see, I'm going to push enter here in a second, we're going to see how long it takes Python to read in all of those rows. Done. That's it. That's it. So let's see if it grabbed them all. I'll do length of data. Yep, 4,153. So that's how many rows there were. And if I wanted the number of columns, I could choose any row. Let's just choose the 0th row, and there are 12 columns. So this is a 4,153 by 12 data set. And I can look at the data, right? I can look at the 0th row, which was the column headers. So there are the column headers as strings. And I could start to look at the first row or whatever I want to do here. Right, so there's the first row. The first row of data, that is. Actually, it's the second row in the Excel spreadsheet. All right, so that's about it. That's how we can import data into Python from Excel. Thank you very much.